Oh, yes.
Good morning.
Good
Or
morning.
afternoon now.
Yeah, that's true. How you doing?
Good.
Good morning.
Hi, Charlotte.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, doing okay, I think.
Well, that's good.
I got out of bed this morning. This is big whoopee.
Well, it is, it's always better than the alternative, unless you're sleeping late, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Shell.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Oh, here's Susie. Hi, Susie. Good morning. Good afternoon, right?
morning. Good afternoon.
Rabbi Zucker is correct. It's already afternoon.
Hello, Rav Zucker and Susu, long time no see. And
Yes,
and Shelly,
Uvracha.
and who else am I seeing here? Carol.
Sure. And
And Charlotte.
no,
Charlotte's here too.
Charlotte.
I said already.
In fact, the moment
yes, here.
I can't see Carol, I can see her little box.
Yeah,
Well, I said she has a box of me. She's there.
Yeah.
yeah.
How's Ricky? Is she okay? Because she hasn't been here for the last couple of weeks.
She was not, she was away for a while, but she was not feeling well last week, I guess. I hope she's doing better. And
Hope so,
Maddie
too.
is babysitting. And unfortunately, one of the kids is sick, so she's taking her to the doctor.
Mhm.
So, well, we're here. So let me start sharing the screen. All right, just have to move things around a little bit. Unfortunately, let me try this one. Okay. That's good. Let me get to everything else. Why can't I get to this to make it larger? Oh, there we go.
That's better.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, sorry. Just took a moment to rearrange all the windows here. Okay, so this week's parasha of Tetzaveh. It's also Shabbat Zachor, but we're not going to talk about Amalek, unless you want to. But we are continuing the discussion in many ways of the Mishkan, but now we're really going to emphasize in particular the people who are serving in the Mishkan, on the Kohanim, and the distinctive dress that they will be using. And then, much of what we'll be talking about is what is the purpose? Why are they dressed the way they're dressed? So first of all, let's just start taking a look at the parasha and just get a lay of the land, if you will. Get a sense of, here's Ricky.
Yay!
Hi, Carol. Now we see you.
Yeah, I had trouble. Okay.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi, how are
I hope
you?
you're feeling
Hey,
better these
hello.
days.
Oh, I'm getting much better, thank you.
Good. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see all of you.
I mean, it's good to see everyone, but so the beginning of the parasha actually, as you can see here, talks about the oil that will be used for lighting the menorah. But we're going to go right to the garments of the high priest. Let's try this again. Okay. Assuming that everyone can see this, who would like to read?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
From the beginning of 28.
28.
Right?
Mhm.
You shall bring forward your brother Aaron with his sons from among the Israelites to serve me as priests. Aaron, Nadav, and Avihu, Eleazar, and Itamar, the sons of Aaron. Make sacral vestments for your brother Aaron for dignity and adornment.
You and I would probably say holy clothes, but that's all right. Sacral vestments works well.
Next, you shall instruct all who are skillful, who I have endowed with the gift of skill, to make Aaron's vestments for consecrating him to serve me as priest. These are the vestments they are to make: a breastplate and
A
a phode,
breastpiece, but
a
breastplate.
breastpiece and a phode, a robe, a fringed tunic, a headdress, and a sash. They shall make these
Those.
sacral vestments for your brother Aaron and his sons for priestly service to me. They therefore shall receive the gold, the blue, the purple, and crimson yarns, and the fine linen.
Now, actually, it should be pointed out right here from the beginning. What's kind of interesting is that we have wool and linen,
Mm-hmm.
which normally is a forbidden mixture, and really it's a sacred mixture, and that's why it's not to be used in regular clothing. But certainly it's used in the materials of the Mishkan, and as well here, as we see in the clothing of the Kohanim. Just get a sense of these elements, and probably maybe next year we'll take a look at some of them specifically, because it's not entirely clear what all of these things are. Go ahead.
But
What? Sorry. Yes, Yehudi?
I think another thing we might want to point out here is that this is the first time we're even hearing that Aaron and his children are going to be priests. In other words, when most people approach the parsha, they take that for granted, and they concentrate on the clothes they're going to wear, which I understand the parsha is going to explain in great detail. But the fact is that the first verse of this parsha and the second verse are the first time all together that we're even told that we're going to have such a thing as a inherited priesthood. Yes, I know in Parshat Yitro there was a reference to Kohanim. We have absolutely no idea who these people were, and they certainly are not related to Aaron, because Aaron at that point isn't functioning as a priest at all. He's functioning as Moshe's sidekick, another leader. And all of a sudden now we're told that Aaron is to be presented, and the dressing is just a side point here. The main point is the appointment of Aaron.
Correct.
And we're so used to it, we don't even realize that that's the main point. If he's going to be appointed, then this is how he'll be dressed. But the main point is the appointment itself.
Yes, but actually, and of course, this is this beginning of the descriptions of the consecration of the priests. Now, we have a Mishkan, a place where God will be worshipped, or will meet with God. But now, of course, there is going to be a whole role for the priesthood.
And let me raise the kicker there. You've got at the end of Shmuel Bet, the sons of David were priests.
Right, and we don't know what that means either.
And,
As a practical matter,
really,
I've had plenty of
There's
places.
really two different directions here, kind of thing.
Well,
Yeah.
The real point I'm trying to make here is that if I was, we're so used to this, we don't even think twice about how revolutionary.
Good
it is.
point. Good
Up
point.
to this point, Aaron was a spokesman for Moshe. He's been like a diplomat. He's been like Secretary of State, person who would basically accompany him to speak to Pharaoh, person who'd be around if Moshe wasn't around. He was a leader. Nobody expected it would be like if, let's say today, you take somebody who up to now has been functioning as vice president or secretary of state, and all of a sudden now they become high priest of the Episcopal Church. Well, whatever. Here we don't have an established church, but in England there is an established church, and it's the Anglican Church. And it would be a little strange if you suddenly found John Major or Boris Johnson suddenly becoming the Archbishop of Canterbury or something along that line, which is exactly what you're getting here. But, and it's just dropped on you out of the blue. And, but you have to realize that, what you're reading now is what Parshas Korach is also going to be about.
Right. Mhm. All right. We're getting some feedback. Okay, thank you. Wait, does somebody have two devices on?
Yeah, kind of. All right, I'll get out of here. How do I get out of here? I don't know.
Gotta mute Carol.
Yeah, I'm trying to get rid of it. Yeah.
The president would appoint his brother as high. That would be even better yet, If most of our presidents have had brothers, they're going to take up, but up to this point, he's had a function in the government, but it has not been a function from where you normally would end up as being archbishop.
Right. So, this is dramatic.
I'm trying to fix this. Okay, I'm trying to read it. Okay,
Yay.
no, I don't
Okay.
hear anything.
Okay,
Yeah.
You
You
want me
just,
to
as long as,
continue?
yeah, go ahead.
from verse 6, right?
Verse 6, right.
They shall make the ephod of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen worked into designs. It shall have 2 shoulder pieces attached. They shall be attached at its 2 ends. And the decorated band that is upon it shall be made like it, of one piece with
With
it?
one piece with it.
Okay, of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen.
Yeah.
Then take 2 lazuli stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel, 6 of their names on the one stone, and the names of the remaining 6 on the other stone, in the order of their birth. On the 2 stones you shall make seal engravings, the work of a lapidary, of the names of the sons of Israel. Having bordered them with frames of gold, attach the 2 stones to the shoulder pieces of the ephod, as the stones for remembrance of the Israelite people, whose names Aaron shall carry upon his 2 shoulders for remembrance before the Lord.
Okay, so we have this remarkable ephod, which the commentators actually disagree about precisely what it looked like. Was it more of a tunic? Was it more of an apron, which is generally how everybody takes it? But clearly the back and the front are connected by shoulder pieces, and on these shoulder pieces are these remarkable stones. So Aharon literally is carrying the names of the people of Israel as he goes in to do the service. Let's go on a little bit longer.
Then make the frames of gold and 2 chains of pure gold. Braid these like corded work and fasten the corded chains to the frames. You shall make a breastpiece of decision.
In Hebrew, the Choshen Mishpat.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, we'll get to that in a moment.
Okay. Work into a design, make it in the style of the ephod. Make it of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen. It shall be square and doubled, a span in length and a span in width. Set in it mounted stones in 4 rows of stones. The first row shall be a row of carnelian,
Carnelian.
chrysolite, and emerald. The second, a turquoise, a sapphire, and an amethyst. The third row, a jacinth, an agate, and a crystal. And the fourth row, a beryl, a lapis lazuli, and a jasper. They shall be framed with gold in their mountings. The stones shall correspond in number to the names of the sons of Israel, 12, corresponding to their names. They shall be engraved like seals, each with its name for the 12 tribes.
Okay, so Aharon will be carrying the names of Israel on his shoulders and on his chest. We're not looking at commentators on this, but just, for your own thoughts, why? What might this represent? Why should you be carrying the names of the tribes?
The beginnings of Israel.
Okay.
Interesting inclusio for the book as a whole. In other words, the book starts with Elah Shemot B'nai Israel, and I don't need that there because they've already said it in Parshat Vayigash.
Right.
So the person, by introducing it there, it's clear that they intend to make use of it somewhere. The question is where they're going to make use of it. Now, I grant you, we're not at the end of the book yet, but we will have the execution of this is not going to take place till chapter 39. And so it makes a perfect inclusio. Why were we told so much at the beginning about Shemot? Because these Shemot are going to be what the Kohen Gadol carries on him when he goes in to basically talk with Hashem or do sacred service. In other words, not only is he going to have him on his chest, he's going to have him on his shoulders, just clearly as who he represents.
Mm-hmm.
The Kohen Gadol is something of a shliach tzibur, okay? And we're going to, we're also going to, fortunately for this, we have people who are wealthy enough in the CM to donate the funds that would be required to put stuff like this on the shoulders of and on the breast of the high priest. But, the result of all that is that basically the Shemot, in other words, now we understand what we're pulling the book together, because there is a bit of a difficulty from where this book starts to where it ends, okay? And by using the word Shemot at the beginning and then using it again here and then at the end in chapter 39, that makes a very nice inclusio and pulls it together as to what this book is about. It's about the Shvatim.
Right. So very good. So this is, about the Shvatim. It's about Israel. And, this a great point. It ties it all together. It's about, this is the beginning of Israel.
The United States could be one country, and it could also be 48 or 50 states. In other words, we call the country the United States of America. So we make a point in the fact that each individual, the states are not identical. They have different authority, but the Kohen Gadol speaks for all of them together. But there's a stress here on the 12-part structure of our political entity that wasn't necessary to basically be introduced at the beginning the way it is, but it is, and it's emphasized. That's my point here. This is presenting us more as a confederation than a unitary state.
Mm-hmm. which biblical scholars have all kinds of discussions about. When we move into Eretz Yisrael, how does the nation really begin? But clearly it's a confederation. But what's the significance of Aharon? I mean, everybody touched on it. What's the significance of Aharon wearing these things as he goes in to serve in the Mishkan?
He serves as the representative for the entire group.
Yeah, I mean, literally, and it's kind of powerful because also our tradition makes a deal over where these things are located. They're
And
located.
the most holy place is where it's going to be used.
Right. But where are they, located on his body?
Above his heart.
Above his heart. So, he's a representative, is a Shliach Tzibor. Yeah, I mean, these are the people that he represents, the consciousness that he must have when he's serving, who he's serving, not just serving God, but on behalf of Bnei Yisrael. And of course, where else are they carried? They're on the breast piece, on the shoulders, right? It's like he's literally carrying them. So, one doesn't have to go into great detail to figure out the symbolism of all this, but, very, very powerful that, as we'll see, I mean, there's a great deal to these garments. And we can't forget what is the breastplate of decision. We're going to come to that. Okay, keep going. 22.
On the breastplate, make braided chains of corded work in pure gold. Make 2 rings of gold on the breastplate and fasten the 2 rings at the 2 ends of the breastpiece, attaching the 2 golden cords to the 2 rings at the ends of the breastplate piece. Then fasten the 2 ends of the cord to the 2 frames, which you shall attach to the shoulder pieces of the ephod at the front. Make 2 rings of gold and attach them to the 2 ends of the breast piece as its inner edge, which faces the ephod. And make 2 other rings of gold and fasten them on the front of the ephod, low on the 2 shoulder pieces, close to its seams above the decorated piece. The breast piece shall be held in place by a cord of blue from its rings to the rings of the ephod, so that the breast piece rests on the decorated band and does not come loose from the ephod.
Okay, so what whole, I mean, you have this elaborate structure really of things being held by different cords, and what in particular cord do they mention here?
Blue.
Right, which of course reminds us of the
Techelet.
right, and it's the exact same word here in the Hebrew. If you can see where my cursor is, biftil techelet, biftil techelet. And as we've talked about before, how the tzitzit on an ordinary Israelite symbolize are deliberately similar to the clothing of the Kohanim. It's like every Israelite we're part of an Am Kadosh, really a Mamlechet Kohanim. So even in the daily dress of the Israelite, there's a reflection of the priestly role that we all carry. So verse 29.
Aaron shall carry the names of the sons of Israel on the breastplate of breastpiece of decision over his heart, when he enters the sanctuary, for remembrance before the Lord at all times. Inside the breastpiece of decision, you shall place the Urim and the Thummim.
What are they?
So that they are over Aaron's heart when he comes before the Lord. Thus Aaron shall carry the instrument of decision for the Israelites over his heart before the Lord at all times.
Okay, again, emphasizing the heart, but now we come to what is the Choshen HaMishpat, a breastpiece of
What's a
decision.
Urim and a Thummim?
Yeah, and
Thummim?
because it's going to hold the Urim and Tumim.
Who are they?
And the
What are they?
what getting there,
Oh, okay.
everybody, please.
Sorry about that.
Take a step. So first of all, I have to imagine this breastpiece, but within the breastpiece are these things called the Urim and the Tumim. And you have a breastpiece of decision, and the Urim and the Tumim are actually the instruments of decision. Let's take a look at Sarna's
Just to
commentary.
explain, for those who are not familiar, the breastplate basically is kind of like an open bag.
Mhm.
The stones and everything are on the top of the decoration on top of it, but the Urim and Tumim would be inside of it, and that they could be taken out when needed.
Right. So now we're going to come to the Urim and the Tumim. So let me just get there. The cord of blue. Here, the Urim and Urim and Tumim. Who would like to? Let me make this a little bit larger. And who would like to read this Urim and Tumim?
Didn't read it.
I'll try and read it, Rabbi.
Okay, thanks, Ricky.
Urim and Tumim. It is quite clear from the association with the breastpiece of decision and the instrument of decision that these two items constituted a device for determining the will of God in specific matters that were beyond human ability to decide. The reference in Numbers 27:21 spells this out. He shall present himself to Eleazar the priest,
Mhm.
who shall
Actually, Eleazar.
who shall on his behalf seek the decision of the Urim before the Lord. By such instructions they shall go out, and by such instruction they shall come in. He and all the Israelites, the whole community. In Samuel 28:6, it is told that Saul inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him, either by dreams or by Urim or by prophets. And Ezra 2:63, Nehemiah 7:65 reports that among those Jews who returned from the Babylonian exile following the Cyrus declaration were some who would not substantiate their claim to priestly genealogy. They were therefore forbidden to eat of the most holy offerings until a priest with Urim and Tumim should appear, through whose instrumentality a divine decision would be obtained.
Now, remember, for ancient peoples, there were different devices they had, or different practices to try and elicit a divine decision, like to seek an oracle. The Oracle at Delphi, how do we know what God wants? Sometimes we really need a specific source of information. Go ahead.
And one of the most common, particularly in Mesopotamia, was the examination of entrails of animals.
Mhm.
How they were shaped would give supposedly a decision one way or the other.
Yeah.
So this was obviously quite different in comparison.
Yeah, but also in other cultures, you have the tea leaves.
Right.
But the entrails of birds in Mesopotamian culture. Okay, go on, Ricky.
The use of the definite article with the Hebrew terms in this passage indicates that the Urim and Tumim are not an innovation here, but are already well known. This conclusion is reinforced by the instruction "you shall place" instead of the usual formula "you shall make."
Yeah, so all everything else, whether it's in the Mishkan or what the Kohanim are wearing, it's "you shall make this." Like, it's not there, but here Well, they seem to know what Urim and Tumim are. Go ahead.
While the function of this device is clear, neither the above cited texts nor the only other references to it in the Torah, Leviticus 8:8 and Deuteronomy 33:8, carry a description of it or the technique employed in its use. A revealing text is Samuel 1, 14:37-41, which tell that King Saul had inquired of the Lord without success. And he then begged the Lord to show Tamim.
Yeah, probably a different spelling.
Okay. The Greek version of this text reads as follows: Why have you not responded to your servant today? If this iniquity was due to my son Jonathan or to me, O Lord God of Israel, show Urim. And if you say it was due to your people of Israel, show Tumim. This reading is apparently based on a tradition that each object was a kind of counter, and that the required decision depended on which one the priest drew out of the koshen or breast in which the two were kept. This procedure is similar to the casting of lots, which is mentioned several times in the Bible. Although
An upcoming holiday, actually.
Although numerous taken divinatory devices are condemned, the Urim and Tumim, like lots, are permitted. There is no mention of them ever being used in an idolatrous context. They are in the exclusive possession of the priest and are always administered on behalf of the leader of the people in matters of national import.
Okay, just a little bit more of the background.
The mode of discovering the divine will never appear beyond the Davidic age, Ezra 263, cited above, implies that it was not available in early Second Temple times. Josephus reports that it had ceased to operate 200 years before his time, in the days of the Hasmonean high priest John Hyrcanus. Mishnah Sota 9:12 relates that with the death of the first prophets, the Urim and Tumim ceased, but it is unclear precisely to which period this refers. Yoma 21b claims they were present in the Second Temple but did not function as before.
Okay, so we're not going to keep reading all of the details, but there are oracular devices that they were somehow used to determine, what God wanted. Precisely what they look like, precisely how they're used, not clear, but they were kept in the Choshen, as Rabbi Zucker mentioned. It's kind of like a pocket. So it's the Urim and the Tumim are in there, and they were carried and used by the Kohen. Okay.
Do we have any instance in Tanakh where we have an execution, successful execution of their use? I realize that Saul is unable to get them to
Right.
the way he wants. On two occasions. Okay. Once in a war, and then later on as he's about to go into the final battle with the Philistine. David has an ephod, but it's not exactly clear whether he has an Urim and Tumim.
Yeah.
And Elazar, who's supposed to be doing it, that's what Parsha Pinchas says. But if you look at Sefer Yehoshua, you don't hear a word about them there. It's them about to go wrong. In other words, I know the prospectus on what's going to happen once they get to Israel says that Joshua is going to ask Elazar to give him a judgment as to who to give land to whom by means of the Urim. But in Sefer Yehoshua, there's not a single word about the Urim.
Yeah.
Something's crazy going on.
A lot of this stuff is actually kind of interesting because the ephod, of course, becomes an object of idolatry later on. So there are a lot of things about this that are rather confusing. And you're right, I cannot think of any case where it's being used really with any success. So keep,
I think the Septuagint, the 14, or Shmuel Aleph, has a more thorough account of what's happening, but it still doesn't end up with a success. But at least it's serious, you know. Whereas what makes me wonder what's happening here is the fact that we're told in a prospectus that Joshua's they're gonna pretty much tell Joshua what how to allot the land. In practice, that just does not seem to be what's actually happening. So, unlike, let's say, right here, when we hear about something that's going to be done in Parshat Tetzaveh, we know it will be done pretty much as it's written in Parshat Pekudei, or some of it will be carried out in Parshat Shmini. What's in chapter 9 will be 29, I'm sorry, will be executed in chapter 8 of Vayikra. But you're not surprised that, you have to have a little fun with discussion and details of the execution over the commandment, but the differences are minor and not of any real consequence. Here, this is a major difference. You hear about something that's going to be the key, and then it turns out nobody actually uses the key.
Yeah. It's very interesting, and again, what happens to the and let's
who uses it, but what I'm trying to say is he doesn't use it successfully.
Right. So again,
Yes,
thinking
down
behind
upon
the
what it's
text,
supposed-
there are many different perspectives that's the contemporary scholarship brings to this as to, is this supposed to be supporting the traditions of the temple? Is it against the traditions of the temple? There's a lot of things that we just don't know about Israelite history, and how our ancestors dealt with the priesthood and all of these elements. But let's go on just a little bit more before we think about what is the purpose of all of this. Who is Ricky, you were reading. You can continue here. You shall make, in verse 31.
You shall make the robe of the ephod of pure blue. The opening for the head shall be in the middle of it. The opening shall have a binding of woven work round about. It shall be like the opening of a coat of mail, so it does not tear. On its hem, make pomegranates of blue, purple, and crimson yarns all around the hem, with bells of gold between them all around. A golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe. Aaron shall make it shall wear it while officiating, so that the sound of it is heard when he comes into the sanctuary before the Lord, and when he goes out, that he may not die.
Yeah, so as my teacher, Rabbi Garfinkel, said, it's the first example of bell bottoms in the history of fashion.
Very funny.
And it's very, very powerful. First of all, the Hebrew is wonderful. Pa'amon rimon, pa'amon rimon. There's a little bit of poetry involved there, but again, that Aharon doesn't just walk in. Can't just walk in on God. You have to give some warning. And I imagine that is why, we take a look at the decorations that we use for the Sefer Torah in synagogue, that so many of these things seem to be similar to the high priest garments. And in fact,
I think that's actually deliberate, because with the loss of the korbanot, the Beit HaMikdash and the korbanot, the sacrifices, so the rabbis wanted to transfer everything to the study of Torah, but they wanted to have it as important like the Beit HaMikdash. So let's decorate. The Torah is covered with a ma'il. Its decorations are all having these, and what are the filials called in Hebrew?
Right.
Ribonim.
So I think you're 100% correct. I think it's an important point. And also, you'll see one of our breastplates for the Torah is got the 12 tribes.
Right.
So, the very, sometimes the stuff is very, very much a deliberate imitation of what we see, or what may
Was that
have existed.
from, did that originate in a time of the before the Islamic conquest or after?
My guess it
In other
would
words,
be
was
later,
this
but I really
practice of
don't know.
remote
Well, I can tell you,
Sefer
from,
Torah was-
unfortunately, from archaeological excavations, we have no Torah
not only
elements.
references, do we have any literary references to the practice of putting Rimonim on the Aseh Chaim before? And remember, the Sfardim don't even have Aseh Chaim. They
Right.
have just one silver casing of a whole Torah.
But they often
couldn't
still
possibly
have Rimonim up on top.
Right.
Yeah, I really don't know.
There was, let me give the one example that I do know fairly well. From the excavations of the Byzantine period synagogue at Ein Gedi, we have the famous, and they've even been able to recover from the ashes part of the text from Vayikra. Amazing job. There was, with that, no evidence of any silver ornaments, or let alone gold ornaments. The ashes and obviously everything was burned. So the covers for it, whether it was out of cloth or whatever, even out of wood, we don't have any of that. But it seems that the scroll was on a roller, more like the Ashkenazi.
we call that Aseh Chaim.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it's called. Okay.
Right.
But what all I'm asking is,
And that's
was the
5th
practice
century.
of putting him on top of the Aseh Chaim with the bells and jingles, and also on top of the silver casing that the Sfardim use, is that practice, if we have any source whatsoever that dates the existence of such a practice before the Islamic period?
I have no idea. I'm
I-
certainly not aware of anything, but I don't really.
Was that from the Talmud? The earliest that could be would be from the time of the Gaonim, if it's even
Most
from there.
likely, yeah.
But before we conclude that this was done as a replacement for the temple, clothing, I don't, not that I in any way challenge that theory. It's probably true, but I'm simply saying it wasn't done immediately afterwards. It was done. That idea must have popped into people's heads. Like, for example, for Hanukkah, you don't have to have a menorah. You just have to have 8 oils separately. They don't have to be arranged. In other words, the idea of buying a Chanukiah is basically comes from after it's the late Middle Ages. I think
Right.
this 17th century are the earliest evidence that there was a widespread practice of doing it that way. So what I'm getting at is, it's not the idea. In other words, I'm sure up to that point, people felt that setting up a Chanukiah, it looks too much like the menorah in the temple. So therefore, people didn't want to do that. In other words, you see, there might have been an objection to it on those grounds. Are we together the same way as there's an objection to eating, meat at the Seder, which reminds you too much of the Karban Pesach.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is later, but exactly when it takes hold or it comes in, I really don't know. Okay, so
And references to it, I know of nothing.
Yeah. So let's
Good
go on.
question.
I want to yeah, it's a great question. Let's go on to a little bit more of it, because all of these garments, as we'll see, are rather crucial, at least were viewed as crucial by tradition. Who would like to continue? We shall make a frontlet of pure gold. Who wants to continue? Verse 36. Anyone?
I can read.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
You shall make a frontlet of pure gold and engrave on it the seal inscription, Holy to the Lord.
Kadosh Ladonai.
Suspended on a cord of blue, so that it may remain on the headdress. It shall remain on the front of the headdress.
And again, it's a patil techelet. So both in the breast piece and here on the frontlet of the Kohen Gadol, the patil techelet. Go ahead.
It shall be on Aaron's forehead, that Aaron may take away any sin arising from the holy things that the Israelites consecrate, from any of their sacred donations. It shall be on his forehead at all times to an acceptance for them before the Lord.
So Aaron's body really becomes an element in the worship of God and an element in the relationship between God and the people. Go ahead.
You shall make the fringed tunic of fine linen. You shall make the headdress of fine linen. You shall make the sash of embroidered work. And for Aaron's sons also you shall make tunics, and make sashes for them, and make turbans for them, the dignity and adornment. Put these on your brother Aaron and on his sons as well. Anoint them and ordain them and consecrate them to serve me as priests.
And of course, we're going to come to that later on in the Torah portion, but this is the first time that we have the establishment of a kehuna, of a priesthood. Okay, and just finish up here.
You shall also make for them linen breeches to cover their nakedness. They shall extend from the hips to the thighs. They shall be worn by Aaron and his sons when they enter the tent of meeting or when they approach the altar to officiate in the sanctuary, so that they do not incur punishment and die. It shall be a law for all time for him and for his offspring to come.
So even
Let me raise a quick question, if you don't mind. In the high holiday liturgy, in the Avoda service, we have the description of the Kohen Gadol changing back and forth his various garments, and there's the golden, he wears his golden robes. What's the basis for that?
Right.
Yeah, actually, you know, as we know from later on, Dafka on Yom Kippur, they wear the white.
Yeah, but he changes back into it.
Once he leaves the Kodesh Kodashim, he does that.
Right.
Inside the Kodesh Kodashim, he never wears anything but the pure white linen. Once he leaves, he has to do things like Karban Musaf and those kind of things he wears his regular clothes for. Yom Kippur has two avodot going on.
Right.
Avodah number one is avodot that are particular to that day. And then there's avodot that are done on many other days, like the Karban Musaf. Okay? So for the avodot or a Karban Tamid, in other words, avodot that are basically regular ones, he wears the regular clothes. But for the specific ones that involve going into the Kodesh Kodashim, he wears nothing but white. That's why the whole thing is introduced at the moment when we're told he's about to go into the Kodesh Kodashim, chapter 16.
Yeah, that's relatively. What are they referring to when they say the golden robes?
Big days Zahav. When you say golden robe, what's your Hebrew?
I don't have a machzor right here. I don't recall.
I don't have a machzor in front of me either.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the term is big day Zahav.
Big day Zahav. Okay. So is that do you understand that as being his regular clothes?
Yeah, that's definitely what it means. You learn Masechet Yoma, that's what it means. The Piyutim are not being influenced by our contemporary archaeological studies. Right. They're being influenced by what the Yerushalmi, especially the Yerushalmi, and to a lesser extent the Bavli, but especially what the Yerushalmi.
So it's not something else that was invented in the Second Temple period.
Well, you know, many people think everything we're reading now was invented in the Second Temple.
That's another question.
All right,
I agree. I agree on that, but
okay. Well, what I'm saying is, it's for sure. All they're talking about is this clothes. The big day Zahav means the clothes that the Kohen Gadol wears every day if he's going to participate in the service.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Okay.
Okay.
And we will be thinking, we're just going to take a look. We won't have much time now. But this important line, "V'asita v'gdei kodesh la'aron achicha," you shall make sacred vestments for your brother Aaron, lechavod ulatifaret, for dignity and adornment. And we're going to try and figure out what does that mean. But first of all, I had to cover some inyana diyoma, because it's connected to a midrash that's connected to Purim from our parasha, from the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, I should say. In Megillat Esther, it says, when Achashverosh is showing off his kingdom, his wealth, Baharoto et Osher Kavod Malchuto, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom, are really the riches that were the honor of their glory of his kingdom. Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Milamed Shelavash Bigdei Chehuna. Yossi Bar Chanina teaches that Achashverosh wore the priestly garments. Now, how is that possible? Because remember that the elements of the temple were captured first by the Babylonians when the temple
transferred
was
to the
destroyed.
Persians after Cyrus.
Transfer, exactly. And of course, we know that when we read from Megillat Esther, that we put in the melody of Echa, particularly when it talks about them in the first party, drinking from Kelim Shonim,
Right.
different the vessels. So here he's making, I don't know if he's making Guzei Rashaba, but he's calling out the similarities in the language, because Ketiv Hacha, here in the Megillah, it says Yakar Tiferet Gedulato. First of all, you have Osher Kavod Malchuto, and then you have Yakar Tiferet Gedulato. Both these words, Kavod and Tiferet, the majestic greatness, these words in Megillat Esther, Uchativ Hatam, and it's written there, actually in our parasha, we are told that the garments are Lechavod Ulatiferet. So just kind of a playful, it's kind of sad, but playful midrash that I just had to bring in because it's in Yana Dioma. Now, we read through all of the details of these garments, and there's a lot of detail. And that remains a very important idea. And even in the Mishnah Torah, which here is really basing itself on the Talmud, of course, but it's just very clearly stated here. Who would like to read? Now, this is halacha. Now, again, of course, it's halacha by Rambam in the 12th century, long after we have the temple and the priesthood. Nonetheless, he's maintaining, as he does in the Mishnah Torah, all of the laws as he understands them. So let's see what the Rambam has to say about all of these garments. Who would like to actually go ahead? Keep going,
I'll read.
Carol.
Oh, Carol.
Oh, you can read.
Okay, go ahead, Charlotte. That's fine.
It is a positive commandment to make these garments and for the priests to serve in them, as Exodus 28:2 states, and you shall make holy garments, and Ibid
That means
29
the same place.
of the same place
Also in Exodus.
states, and drew near his sons and dressed them in tunics.
Okay, so simply he's taking the biblical verses saying it's a positive commandment. This is something we have to do.
I
But-
think also that you have to keep in mind that there still was a hope. This was certainly before the Omar Mosque was put on the Kippat HaSela, that there was something up that we don't know exactly what, but there was a hope, certainly in the Jewish community, that the temple would be restored. And so Rambam is giving us, that happens, we've got to do these things.
Yeah, and of course, Rambam has all of the laws of the Beit HaMikdash, and then in his more in the Nevuchim, he talks about, well, God only gave us the sacrifices because that's how people knew how to worship. We wouldn't use anymore. Will the real Rambam stand up? But
Indeed.
regardless of the inconsistencies, I won't say contradictions because Rambam is a careful writer. But let's see how important all of these garments are.
When a high
Keep
priest
going.
serves with less than these 8 garments, or an ordinary priest serves with less than these 4 garments, he is called lacking garments.
Yeah, there's a creative
service-
statement.
His service is invalid, and he is liable for death at the hand of heaven, like a non-priest who serves.
That's quite a punishment. That someone would be liable for the death. Chayav mita, of course, it's mita bidei shamayim. It's in God's hands, but a pretty harsh punishment for serving without the proper garments. Go ahead.
And you shall gird them with a sash, and their priesthood shall be for them. When their garments are upon them, their priesthood is upon them. If their garments are not upon them, they are like non-priests, concerning whom Numbers 151 states, a non-priest who draws close shall die.
So basically, they're really only when they're in their uniforms, as it were, are they really considered priests. If they're not wearing this, they're not. They're like a
Nowhere.
czar, a non-priest. And
That's straight, Rabbi Papi. In
Okay.
the army, we've all seen the movies where the sergeant inspects the soldiers, and Lord help the Marine who's got
Mhm.
one thing out of joint, they end up going to KP duty or who knows what else. In other words, once you give people a uniform, you take the uniform very seriously.
oh, yes. And there are very specific rules in the military for when you can wear your uniform and when you can't. So
And
it's
so this whole, at this point, we're also being called Tzivot Hashem.
mhm,
Yatsu called Tzivot Hashem in Eretz Mitzrayim.
yeah. So
So I
So
just
after all,
have a
Chazal is
yeah.
one of
mhm.
the-
Yes, Carol?
Yeah, so if that midrash about King Achashverosh and wearing the priestly garments, if I understood it correctly, maybe I didn't. But if he wore them, it should have been like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he should have died immediately upon wearing those vestments. If if somebody who was entitled to wear it had to be perfect about it. Yes, I just don't understand how he could have gotten away with wearing them, even in a midrash.
Well, how could the Babylonians have gotten away with destroying the temple?
First of all, he's not wearing them in a holy temple. He's simply wearing them. Secondly, the whole midrash is fictitious for a different reason. The book of Ezra makes it perfectly clear that these things were handed back pretty much as soon as Koresh conquers Bavel. Koresh hands all these kalim back to who the Judean representatives, Sheshbatzar and Zerubbabel. So the midrash is just trying to show that Achashverosh is trying to show off with something that really doesn't belong to him. It's not trying to basically, nobody considers this midrash to represent reality. It's just the way people operate with captured goods.
Yeah, and
Showing-
also, yeah, and even adding the Echa trope to Esther, it's Kelim Shonim. There's really nothing to indicate that these were in fact the vessels from the temple, especially as you said, that they were given back. But it just drives home this point. And people living in exile, people dealing now from a state of degradation when their conquerors seem to be on top. That's what the Midrash presents. Now we're really at the end, so we don't have time to look at this. But we will. What I wanted to do was take a look at. It says we wear them lechavod ulatifaret for dignity and adornment. That's adornment. That's why the Kohen Gadol wears all of these things. And the question is, whose dignity and whose adornment? Many and there are different positions. There's certainly the position that this is for the Kohen Gadol, and in fact, the Kohen Gadol has to be seen as something special. We put people in uniforms so that they are distinguished, and their status and their importance is clear. But Sforno uses both. So here he says lechavod, and it says that they wear these garments lechavod ha'el yitbarach. And to honor to the Almighty, may ye be blessed. Biotam bigdei kodesh la'avodato, in that they are sacred garments for His service. So on one hand, they are for God, but he kind of splits the difference and says ula tifaret, for adornment, sheyeh kohen mora nora al kol svivav, so that the priest should inspire awe among those around him or all his disciples, the people. Shehem talmidav hachakukim al libo tefav, who are engraved on his heart and on his shoulders. So Sforno picks up that it's both for God and for the Kohen Gadol, if you will, or for part of the pomp and circumstance, not in a negative sense, but that he really stand out. And there are different perspectives within the tradition. We won't have time to study this, but just, on your own, if you want to look at some of these, you certainly may. So, but it's good to take a look at the details of all of those garments.
If you are interested, there is, if you have available, Views of the Biblical World, which came out probably 6 decades ago or so.
Yeah.
7 decades ago. They have paintings of not only the what they think the Mishkan looked like, but also of the Big Day of Kahuna. And it certainly is a helpful starting place to get a better idea.
Yeah, maybe I've done it in the past, and maybe I'll remember to do it on Shabbat morning, is to bring up the book, a beautifully done book, The Tabernacle, in Hebrew HaMishkan, which is kind of like an artist reconstruction, model reconstruction of the Mishkan and all of the garments of the Kohen. And you've got the rough sketches in the back of the Hayim. Pardon me?
Well, on Parsha Vayakhel Pekudah, you have a chance for a resumption.
That's true. Yeah. So, if you missed anything on last week's parasha or this week's parasha, it's going to come back all at once in the double portion of Vayakhel Pekudah. So, Toda Rabbah, everyone.
Yashar Koach Hashara.
Yashar Koach.
Yes,
Yeah, and
yes.
have a good day, everybody. Stay well.
And thank you, Yudi, for your points.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And not to be forgotten that, yes, we're talking where, this was great for my father who was in the dress business, to pay attention to all of these details. But, this is the introduction of the kahuna, of the priesthood, and which certainly will take center stage in later parshiot. All right. And
a Jewish garment worker wrote the Tanakh. It starts with the clothing that Hashem gives us in Garden of Eden, and then eventually gives them a full set of clothes. Ve'il, Vayas Hashem, Elohim, La'adamu Yishto, what, or wrote, big day, or I forgot what the term.
Big day, or
they're always a big deal in Tanakh, everywhere.
Oh, and shall we not forget the importance?
Manufacturer's dream.
Yeah, and should we not forget all the different ways that clothing is in fact used to show status or situation, whether it's Yosef who gets the ketonet pasim, and that gets ripped off him, then he's put on the royal robes. We're coming up to Purim. We see that Mordechai loses his sackcloth and ashes and puts on the kingly robes. And my teacher at Greenstein used to say it's like the first Purim masquerade. Jews are dressing up as royalty, Mordechai and Esther. And then, of course, Tamar, David's daughter, who also gets a ketonet pasim. Yoshua, the high priest, in Zechariah's vision. That was the last holiday, but Zechariah in his dream sees the high priest being stripped of his filthy clothes and once again putting on the Big Day Kahuna, indicating the new status of Israel in God's eyes. So, the old saying, the clothes make the man.
Tanakh is
certainly true in the Tanakh.
Yeah.
All right,
Yes.
take care, everybody.
Want to have a good day.
Yep, okay, let me,
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom Barach.
There we go.